Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We are going to continue on with this week's theme of Anxiety Week, listening to the music that just makes you tense or nervous, on edge, or anxious. Today we're going to be checking out something from Black Midi. The song is Near DTMI. Probably dig into what that's supposed to mean later on. However, to me it reads as Near Detroit, Michigan. I don't know if that's what they're going for with this, but let's dive in. See what Black Midi's bringing to the table today. Nice pace for a 4/4. Very noisy. Sitting within one chord. Interesting little gap that the drummer threw in there.
He drinks a lot. Outside his home.
Yeah, that's definitely a tense atmosphere right there.
The love in the water.
I like the occasional ghost notes on the snare. Not so occasional anymore.
What's in the water? Here in the water. And I see you hide. I'm alive, and I can see the water's foul, and it's hard to read. There's light in the water, there's light in the water, there's light in the water, and you see that I'm fine. I'm safe on the water, and I don't leave the water. I'm safe on the water, and you're losing your mind. Down in the water, down in the water.
Not a single moment of that was wasted. It's a double-edged sword with these short tracks. Usually, there's not a lot of music to really digest, so I pick it up quickly and that's it. On the other hand, I haven't really had a lot of time to, figure out the order that I want to go through some topics. I'm sort of biding my time right here. All right, tension. Various types of tension in here. I think the first one that we kind of hear, there's a little bit of harmonic tension at the beginning of the track in that very first section, but primarily I get tension here harmonically. We are just playing one chord. We have a very brisk pace. I conducted out the 4 beats of the bar. Everything takes up one bar. It's a very short, concise, maybe 2-second idea that we hear over and over and over and over without any variation to it. Honestly, I don't think we have any additional layers that come in slow burn style. We don't have chord progression through here. It's just a static idea for such a long time. And honestly, it probably isn't a long time. It's 20, 30 seconds maybe. It just felt like a long time because nothing happens, but it's kind of harmonically dissonant. You're expecting either a move into something that's going to have momentum to it of some sort. This is a static intro into a momentous next section. or a type of relief. All of this tension, both the harmonic staticness and the harmonic tension, just having really dissonant notes being played next to each other, that's going to resolve itself into something. We're going to find a way to bring movement to the static elements, or um, consonants to the dissonant ones. And this, as it continues to go on, that feeling of, when do we leave this place? When does this get better? It grows even more so with every bar that passes. And that's its own type of tension right there. The next section, though, brings in a few different ideas, primarily on the melodic side of things. We have a couple of different melodies from guitars and I don't even know, different pitched instruments going on here, and none of them are really. Oh no, actually, I skipped a section. Yeah, that's the lead up to that is the penultimate section. There's this reduction of energy. I forgot about this one. This is all about building a feeling of uh, anxiety through harmonic tension and volume. We start out really low, just bass. We have a couple of other instruments kind of playing odd ideas, kind of as the song falls apart in a sense. But the volume comes down on these instruments. They're all sort of descending in pitch too. They're not all in the same key, which I thought was interesting, and this creates another layer of friction on a harmonic level. And this descends down, and we just have bass, we have drums, we have vocals. The drums are very light, fairly sparse, and the vocals are fairly sparse too. A couple of syllables, and then nothing for a couple of seconds, then a couple more syllables. It's very spaced out. The bass gives us our harmonic information here. A little bit of bass movement, but we can also hear that the collection of notes that the bass is playing shifts over time. And this is the chord moving. Now, where the chord moves to typically moves into very tense ideas. There is a subtle bit of almost a half resolution moving from the end of this phrase back to the root, but it isn't, I don't think we're actually going back to the root chord of the progression. I think it just is it would be a half cadence release there where we don't have full resolution. And we'll see, this can come in two ways. Either we're not at a chord that is going to resolve to another one neatly, like moving from the fourth to the fifth, that has a lot of release and resolution to it, or like the third and the second both kind of dip down to the first really well too. So it could be that we're moving from like the fourth to the first, which is going to have an element of resolution to it, but not a really strong one. But it could also be that we're not returning back to the one at all. Just moving from a more tense to a less tense chord where things feel a little less constricted. You can kind of have a little bit more room to breathe, but the panic attack isn't over yet. You can feel there's still more to come. Regardless, we have a half resolution here, and it ensures that this chord progression that the bass goes through never really has a moment where it feels like we've gotten through this moment. And so that tension at the beginning has built into this almost dread here. It also feels constricting, but it's no longer an element of when do we get through this. It's sort of, this is it. And this is my life now. And I have varying levels of tension and anxiety, but I don't know rest at all. Some days are better than others, but none are great. That kind of vibe is what I get in this section. But the thing is, too, is it's not just about this one idea. Slowly, we begin to add other instruments in. The volume rises, the drums and the vocals begin to have more notes played to them. I had mentioned that I really like the sparse uh, ghost notes on the snare, and about the time I said that, we were getting 2 or 3 ghost notes every bar now, kind of ramping up the intensity. The volume also rises through this. The vocalist is throwing more words out. This grows into the section that I was talking about with so many disparate parts going on. The vocalist is just scream yelling at this point. I could barely understand them when they were like super quiet in the other section. I really couldn't understand them here. I don't know what kind of harsh vocal technique this is. To me it sounds something along the lines of a compressed clean, but the I'd say that the delivery of it ends up feeling very raw in a way that is less of a trained type of compressed clean and sort of just yelling into a microphone. It sounds like a healthier way of doing this than how most people would yell uncontrolled in a situation. Maybe like you're on a theme park ride, or maybe you're in a scary situation and you just, that natural scream that comes out, right? That one is not sustainable at all. But this feels a little more sustainable as a technique just based off of the timbre of it, but it also captures a lot of that rawness of just letting yourself go and doing whatever your vocal cords feel like they need to do at the moment without any sort of control over them in order to create a safe environment to deliver this. Um, and so I can't hear what he's saying at this point. I think there's also a looseness of delivery too, where there's not a strong enunciation of syllables, just sort of slurring through these words. A lot of soft sounds in there as well. So, there aren't any really hard T's or hard G's or anything like that. Everything has a softness to it. The T's kind of turn into very soft D's and stuff like that. Again, da 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 rather than ta 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 ta. In music terms, kind of moving from staccato to legato enunciation. I thought that was I mean, maybe it is full of D's too. Maybe it's just a lot of alliteration of this D sound in there. I don't know. What I do know though is that his screaming feels real, it feels raw, and everything else around the vocals is chaos. Notes just coming at whatever interval they want to. There's some shredding off on one side, there's some runs on another. They're not in the same chord at all. The notes that they're playing clash heavily. The bass is doing whatever it feels like doing down there. The drummer is doing all sorts of crazy stuff. There's some auxiliary I don't know, synthesizer stuff going on in the background too, and it just doesn't match anything else either, and it's just this cacophony of sound, and then the song ends. Multiple styles and layers of tension through all of these sections, whether it's rising energy, a rising level of dread, or a chaos, and wanting the sound to stop, or being stuck in a loop. They find several ways to make a song that, at least for me, I don't want to be in for very long. Many of these sections are antagonistic to me. And I appreciate that from an artistic angle. This isn't a song I think I'll be returning to, which is fairly often for Black Midi. They have some songs that click with me, but for the most part, I see them as very artsy in a way, where I appreciate what they're doing, and I actually would, I praise them too. I think they're a unique voice in the realm of rock right now, but it generally doesn't connect with me on a casual level where I want to listen to more of it. Maybe I've just heard the wrong songs from them too. I've definitely been giving more of their esoteric stuff, and maybe that's all they make, but maybe they also have more palatable music too. This definitely veers into the side of experimental noise rock at times. The low quiet section does feel very homey to me in a sense. It's kind of grungy, and I do like grunge, but there's just enough elements to it too that sort of take that energy that grunge usually has, that almost low energy, brooding kind of heaviness, and almost distorts it into a way to amplify all of these sounds with the type of terror, which creates an atmosphere that again, I don't really want to be within. So I find that really impressive that they can do this. It isn't a one trick idea of, hey, we have clashing harmonies here. We play around with notes with lots of dissonance and we'll just do that for 2 minutes. No, they find multiple ways to achieve this varying types of anxiety and dread and chaos and just constant feeling of not being in control, not being safe, not being happy in any way, and always feeling stressed. I think that's a really good word for this track is stress. It is a stressful experience, and I feel like stress can be used to describe all three styles of tension that they use in here. Now, aside from that, there really isn't much else I want to add to this. It is a series, almost a series of vignettes. They are all connected thematically through this stress analogy, but for the most part, the opening doesn't really feel anything like the quiet section, and that doesn't really feel anything like the large bombastic ending, the chaotic finale to the track. The finale and opening have a little bit more in common, but they also deviate a little bit. The ending isn't just in one chord like the beginning, and the ending plays around with harsher note intervals than the beginning. So similar, but different. And so while I do kind of see a general narrative to this, a rising and falling and rising stress level, musically there's not a lot of connection through this. And I find that interesting because usually when I have a hard time piecing together similarities between ideas, the song ends up feeling disparate to me. But this doesn't. The series of vignettes all make sense to me as a story. And I appreciate that because sometimes I do need to get my biases in check. I do tend to fall into the trap of hearing something and kind of moving into a familiar territory of critique about it and analysis. And it's always nice to be reminded that I can't always fall into those trappings. Just because a song has three distinct sections doesn't mean that it is disconnected, disjointed, or having disparate parts. And this is a nice reminder of that. The instrumentation on here is fantastic. Some of the runs are very difficult to play. The vocal style is all over the place. We get two very distinct, very different vocal deliveries on this. And the drumming is excellent. I love the sort of atmospheric drumming we get from it. We do get some backbeat towards the end of the song, but a lot of this is sort of how can we add to the atmosphere, which just is not something the drummer usually worries about. They're very rhythmic. They do have texture, but that's more on the production side. How do you want the drums to sound after they've been recorded? But the drummer actually has a lot of composition in here that feels like it adds to the atmosphere. When things are slow, the drummer's playing a bit slower. Not really a care for keeping a beat or anything like that. In fact, the bass tends to be the heartbeat of the song in a couple of the sections. I think it's just the middle section then, because the drums do kind of take on a little bit more of a backbeat feel in the opening and outro. But they get playful too, at least in the outro. The intro is very simple drum beat, but the outro has a little bit of playfulness to it, kind of bringing in a melodic flair to an otherwise rhythmic style of playing, and sort of marries the drum work of the intro and the second section into one idea. So that's kind of nice too. And there's a bunch of instruments in here that I don't remember what they are. Non-rock instruments. I picked up the synthesizer. I know Black Midi has had some brass in their band before, but I don't know what kind of lineup they had for this. I don't think I heard any brass in here, but I could have missed it too. I was very overwhelmed with the song. That's another good word for it. It is very overwhelming. All right, 15 minutes for a 2-minute song. I don't think that's too bad. Let's dive into some lyrics. And I think I'm right about this title being near Detroit, Michigan. We're talking about Flint, Michigan here, which 10, 11 years ago, a lot of the water ended up becoming very leaded. And not good for human consumption. And it was this huge fiasco, but I don't think it ever really got addressed. I'll have to look that up. I mean, it's been a decade. I really hope things have been fixed over there. Public uh, trust is probably going to take a lot longer, but I don't even remember really what happened. I remember they changed. I think they changed water suppliers, and I don't remember why, but a lot of the water became full of lead, and a lot of people got sick. I think there was quite a few deaths from it too, and I remember the government just sort of being, well, this is the way things are kind of idea, trying to brush it under the rug until it became like a national news story. And then they started to backpedal, oh no, we're going to fix it. But yeah, it was just frustrating, man. I'm not even from Michigan. I wasn't even affected by it. I was still frustrated by it. It's just so stupid. Anyways, I'm not going to get on a rant here. Let's talk about some lyrics. It opens up, says he sleeps alone, he drinks alone outside his home. This just creates a feeling of isolation, which I think we didn't have vocals in the beginning, the single moment. So this was during the quieter section of the song, which felt very isolating. We had all of this noise that got dropped down to just bass and vocals and light drums. So musically, we reached a bit of isolation too. And then it says they're loving the water, they breathe in the water, they fight in the water, they're fixing the water, what's in the water, here in the water, and I see you hide. Okay. And then it says, and this is how the song wraps up. I believe this is the screamed part. I'm alive and I can see the water is foul and it's hard to breathe. There's lead in the water, there's lead in the water, there's lead in the water. And you think that I'm fine. I'm stained by the water and only the water. I'm drained by the water. Are you losing your mind? Dead in the water, dead in the water. So yeah, it talks about the citizens living in the water, as most of us do. Water is necessary to life. It's practically, or it should be at least, a human right. You need water to survive. Our bodies are mostly made of water. We need water to be clean so that we don't get infections and all sorts of other things. And there's just like water is necessary for life. And it talks about people, I mean, breathing in the water, I think, is a bit more metaphorical. But even fighting in the water, fixing the water, this is all a bit more metaphorical too. But it talks about how people need water. Anything they do is done with water, which, yeah, it's necessary for life. And then it says, what's in the water? I see you hide. So I question what's going on here, and you hide away from this. You don't confront or you don't stand up for this. You don't actually see what's going on. You run and hide. You'd rather try to sweep this under the rug than deal with it. And then we come out with a type of fury, this yelling. And it says, the water is foul. There's lead in the water. And you think I'm fine. Stained by the water. I think it's interesting. He says, are you losing your mind? Because lead consumption, I believe, leads to uh, cognition failure, cognition, decreased cognition, stuff like that, mental issues. And then finally says dead in the water, which, of course, like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure there were quite a few deaths in Michigan, Flint, Michigan, over this too high consumption of lead. So when did this come out? 2019. So that would have been 5 years in, give or take. Because it was like mid 2010s, I think, was when the news story broke. So probably, I mean, they've probably been dealing with it even months before that. Might have been 2013. I don't know, man. Somewhere around that time. Early to mid 2010s, I would say. So yeah, we're like 5, 6 years into it. And now Black Midi decides to make this song, which, like I mentioned, last I heard, they were still dealing with this. So it was taking a long time to address this, which I always thought was funny. They switch things over rather quickly, but to fix things, you're really dragging your feet, huh? Uh, Not funny in a comical way, of course. Anyways, yeah, I think this is a perfect song for anxiety and tension. Kind of like the opening. I think this is interesting how it kicks off with talking about someone who's alone outside of his home. And he drinks alone too. I think this is talking a little bit about the isolation of the people in general from the government, and kind of seeing how they're a separate entity. And they can just do whatever they want because, of course, it's not going to affect them. It's just going to affect the people, and who cares about the people? But I think it's also about um, the people of Flint, Michigan, which I could be way off on this. I'm going based off of the um news articles I read about it, and this was also, quite some time ago. But I'm pretty sure that it wasn't a a middle to high class, wealthy suburban area. I'm pretty sure it was more of a lower class area too. So drinking, often being alone. I mean, these are things that can certainly affect um, people of lower class incomes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it paints a picture specifically of the people who were affected and then saying what else they were affected by. Because the idea is that usually when something goes wrong or there's infrastructure issues or when the government just decides to make a decision that might screw some people over, it's always the poor who get hit first, isn't it? And usually the poor who get hit the hardest. And I think that's what this opening is supposed to be kind of bringing to mind. Although it is vague, it can represent a few things, but that's kind of what I'm picking up from it. So the idea of feeling alone, feeling tense, being overwhelmed, being overstressed, and then having this put on top of you too. Yeah, a song about rising and increasing in different types of stresses and anxiety make perfect sense for these lyrics. Now I'm getting riled up, man. These are my thoughts. Black Midis near Detroit, Michigan. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? And please, if I've misspoken about anything, let me know. I probably should have went and did a little bit more research back into that, but just I guess being a little cocky. Yeah, I remember that stuff. That was a decade ago. I still have some of that memory. Now I'm thinking about it. Some of that stuff might be wrong. If it was, again, let me know. I don't like to spread misinformation about stuff. Also, your interpretation of this. If you have anything you'd like to add, or maybe your own way of viewing this, please put all of that stuff down into the comment section, as well as any other thoughts you have. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.